Good morning, everyone. It is Sydney Walker with Coffee and Politics 101, and we are going to have a great discussion today about troubling times that, a lot of us may have had a family member. We ourselves may have had an issue with some kind of substance abuse and may have ended up in the criminal justice system. So I am joined today by Judge Lela Lawrence Mays, and she is the presiding judge of the 283rd Court in Dallas County, and she presides specifically over the STAC Court, which is Successful Addiction Through Collaboration.
Almost, Sydney. Successful treatment of addiction through collaboration. STAC.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. That is okay.
So, people of all walks of life have problems. And unfortunately, last night I talked to a lady that I worked with before I went to graduate school, and I dated her and dated both of her sons. And
that's a whole nother story.
That's when I do sex and coffee and politics, we'll bring all that kind of stuff back up. So I found out, and it was so interesting because I hadn't heard from him, and she would always call me on my birthday, and turns out that he passed away in 2018, and he had been dealing and using and combined that with drugs and alcohol, and found out that with that also was HIV positive. And literally my heart stopped.
Wow.
Because he was a really great guy to talk to when you were having struggles with, a business idea, how to sell yourself, your services. He was great at walking you through that. I mean, actually took me and walked me through purchasing my first brand new car and said, never be so attached that you can't walk away from the table.
Right.
And it breaks my heart. So I can only imagine, people being challenged in this space. So definitely
so
just face.
Yeah. It's just so much. It affects so many families. And if it's not you, it's a family member. If it's not a family member, it's a friend, a coworker. And I mean, people are struggling. And it's because of COVID, we're struggling even more than we ever have been before.
Yes. So please introduce yourself further and tell us more about this program that you have, because it's definitely needed.
All right. Well, my name is Judge Lela Lawrence Mays, and I am the judge of the 283rd Criminal District Court. District Court means it's a felony court. And I have a background of being a magistrate. I've been on the Dallas County felony bench since 2000. So it is, we're now in year 21.
Okay.
So about 2002 is when I started working in a program that was somewhat new in Dallas County that dealt with addiction. And so the general category, and I guess let me back up just a little bit. I am originally from Austin, Texas, and I went to school in Houston. So I've covered Houston, Austin, and Dallas. Grew up in Austin, went to University of Houston undergrad, went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Texas Southern for law school, and then moved to Dallas. So I've been in Dallas since 1990.
Okay, great.
I always thought I wanted to be in private practice. So I started out in private practice. I did that for 10 years, and then life happened.
Okay.
The way I explain it to people, when I say my life happened, I knew I needed to get a divorce. And I said, y'all, this was before computers. This is before the people had emails and laptops, and this was a long time ago, back in I guess it was just in the early years when you were practicing law. When people had to get out of jail, you had to get out of your bed
go down there,
meet the family members, get the money, and I had little kids. So I decided to get on the bench. And one of the things that I realized when you work as a magistrate, one of your first steps, and for people who don't know, a magistrate just means you're an appointed judge and
Okay.
not an elected judge. That's the only difference. What you're doing is helping the elected judge out with all the other things that they're not able to do because they're so busy doing their things that they're required to do.
Yes.
And so when I started working there, you work at the jail. I worked at the jail from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I worked deep night,
Wow.
and I absolutely loved it. I love that shift. I'm a night person, if you can't tell. And so what I saw, y'all, was that there were people that were coming back through. You'd arraign them, set the bond, they get out on bond, take care of their case, and they'd be right back.
Oh,
So I said, why do I keep seeing these same people coming through arraignment with new cases? And
yes.
that it dawned on me that these, and you could, of course, when y'all see people at the jail, y'all, they don't have their stripes and jumpsuits and cleaned up. That's not who I see. That's not who I saw. I saw people that were out on the street, people who were in the middle of their addiction. There were people that you see people pretty raw at the jail.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so as a result, I started having an interest in getting into, what do we do different to help the people that have drug and alcohol addiction? So I started working in a court called Divert Court, and Divert Court deals with people who are first-time felony offenders that have possession cases and possession of marijuana cases and prescription fraud cases come through the system without a case. Well, actually, they file the case, but they don't move forward with it. And then what happens is at the end of your session, at the end of your time in Divert, your case is dismissed. So you kind of get a fresh start.
Yes, not having that felony on your record that can hinder you from job opportunities, rental opportunities.
Exactly.
It's very life-changing. It's so interesting that you mentioned that, because one year I was doing a voter registration run at my Park South YMCA. That's my polling place.
Yes.
And met a group of teenagers, and I was like, okay, are you going to be almost 18 when the election comes? Because we need to get you registered to vote.
Right.
And one young man, he was a Latino, and he said, ma'am, I'm not able to register to vote. And I'm like, oh, you're not old enough. And he said, no, ma'am, it's not that. I have a felony. This baby is 18.
Let me tell you this, though. Let me tell you this, and I'm so glad you brought that up. The issue is not having the felony. The issue is whether or not you're on paper. And those of us in the system, we know what on paper means.
Yes.
If you're on probation or parole, you cannot vote. But once you complete your probation or parole, or once you get out of the pen and you're no longer on parole, you can now vote. So you're able to vote. And I think the public needs to be educated about that too.
Yes. So open door policy with Coffee and Politics. So we probably should have a roundtable discussion so everybody understands that. And I would love to have Allison on the show to have that discussion, because, there was a case, very high profile, young lady thought she could and voted and then got in trouble. Yes. So yes, those are definitely things. And with my precinct being in South Dallas, I'm always asking, are you still completing your requirements? Because if you are, yes, I can't get you to vote. If not, let's get you registered.
That's right.
Get down to that polling place.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
So let me take it a little forward. So Divert Court, it is specific to first-time offenders.
Okay.
That was in 2002 when I started working there. Well, one thing that I realized is that we need to work with all these other folks that are not first-time offenders that nobody got.
Yes. Because I have noticed that first time, or it seems to focus on, under 25 age group. And I'm like, well, what if bad things happen to good people?
That's exactly right.
The time.
All the time.
Let's say you happen to be 47 or 37, whatever age. Yes. And, you just took a wrong turn for whatever reason. A medical crisis with your family, you're in depression, you've lost your job, house, all those kind of things. And it can really put you in a bad place.
Exactly.
And something happens. So we don't want we shouldn't leave those people out. So yes, please talk
Yes,
about.
that's exactly right. Well, in 2006, Charles Robinson and I developed a program that's called STACK, the
Okay.
Successful Treatment of Addiction Through Collaboration. All that means is we work with addicts to try to collaborate with the public to try to figure out what we can do to get people back on their feet. And so, one thing that everybody should know about is that Dallas County has their own treatment facility, an inpatient treatment facility that's located in the Wilmer area,
Okay.
called the Judicial Treatment Center.
Okay.
And the Judicial Treatment Center houses for a 6-month period of time people that have drug and alcohol addiction. Doesn't matter what kind of case you have, as long as it is a felony, and they do take some misdemeanor cases. And
Okay.
STACK was put in place to provide the aftercare. So this is
Okay.
the issue too that people need to understand. When you have someone that is in their addiction and they go to treatment, they are not cured when they come out.
No, that's just the beginning of the journey, actually.
Exactly. That's the beginning of the journey. And with that being the case, we found out that the aftercare is what was necessary and what was missing. So the aftercare part of it becomes you go straight from your 6-month inpatient to court. You come to court and we do your intake. Your intake is going to include all the rules and regulations we want you to follow. And the first thing we want you to do, and really almost the only thing we want you to do, is stay clean. We don't want you to worry about probation because everybody that comes to staff, they're on felony probation. So you are not looking for a job. You should not be worried about your probation conditions, paying fees and fines. All we want you to do now is get into a routine of recovery, which means stay away from old people, places, and things. Get to a 12-step meeting because that is what's required. Although there are different ways to recovery, STACK requires 12-step meetings because that's one thing we can at least verify that we know exists. And NA and AA, Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and the different anonymous groups, they work. They work. They are tried and true, and they work. Maybe they don't work for everybody, but they do work. And we require people to get a sponsor. Now, a sponsor is someone who has gone through the 12-step meetings, who's in the 12-step meetings. We require them to have a sponsor that has 5 years clean. I think that's important. And has a sponsor of their own. Okay. People in STACK, not only do they have a sponsor, they have a grand sponsor. Like a grandmother, grandfather, they're called a grand sponsor. That means your sponsor has a sponsor.
Okay. Okay, very good. Well, you know, it takes a village. And anybody who has gone through any traumatic event, gone through any hard times in their life, understands how much you need your support of those that really care about you and are really looking out for your best interests. Not just folks that you know, because as you pointed out earlier, people, places, and things, you got to stop going to those old places.
That's right.
It's going to trigger that inside of you.
Yes. And the other thing I tell people too about old people, places, and things, just imagine this. We put someone in a 6-month inpatient facility. We have given them all we could when it comes to education, how to deal with family members, how to keep yourself safe. And then all of a sudden you come out and go hang out with those same people that are on the corners, that are in the houses. You know, they don't want to see you doing good. They're saying, oh, so now you think you're better than me.
Right.
You know, and so
that's the unfortunate part. Yes.
The unfortunate part. People who are your true friends won't let you mess up, especially when they know you're looking at prison time.
Right. Yes. Because that is a game changer.
Exactly.
All in itself.
And you have to have people realize that, because let me tell you what I found out when I first started doing STACK and really was on the bench is the fact that a lot of people would say, oh no, Judge, just let me take my time. I don't want to do this.
But you know what? It's great that you bring that up, because I remember talking to now DA Cruzo, and he told me about a case that he had when he was on the bench. Just like that. Guy had been before him several times, and he was like, just let me do my time. I can do it. I can do my bid. And it's like, and Cruzo was like, we're not doing this.
Yeah, we do that all the time at the courthouse. And so what happens is, and it's really funny, I guess it just depends on who may be watching this. And people say, what is that? That is a very, very common request. And people have to put it into perspective. People are used to using, picking up a case, doing whatever days in jail, maybe even a couple of years in jail, coming back out and doing the same thing. Well, the only way that we in the system can stop that is that all across from magistration to your district judge to your sentencing, you've got to make sure that everybody along the way has the same mindset of not letting you take your time. You can't take your time. We are going to require you to do treatment. And if you mess up, if you run, when we find you, we're going to send you back to treatment. When you mess up and you run,
not jail, back to treatment.
Yeah, because all it does is it's filling up the jails. And so ever since, and I guess let me go back to talk about this too. When you talk about stat court, it is what's called an alternative to incarceration. Okay. So this is something else we do as opposed to just sending you down for time. That's easy. We can send everybody down for time.
You know, yes, that takes no effort whatsoever.
And so what they call it, they say, hey, judge, I just want 3 hots and a cot. Give me 3 hots and a cot. No, sir, not on my dime, not on the government's dime. You're not going to do that. We're going to require you to do treatment. And it's a lot cheaper for us to do treatment than it is to incarcerate.
Okay, say that again for those that are in the very, very nosebleed seat.
Right. It is much more cost effective for us to put people in treatment than to incarcerate them. Much more. It is cheaper. And with that being the case, you all, once we started this, what we call STAC, a problem solving court, you can call it a specialty court, any of those types of courts, they are put in place to provide resources for the individuals that come through. So not only are we getting you out of treatment, you're coming to court, you're in court, like I can just tell you specific to STAC. You're in court 1 time a week initially. Okay. And you have to see your probation officer 1 time a week. Okay. You must make at least 4 12-step meetings a week. They last 1 hour. You choose, 7 days a week. You just make 4 of them for 1 hour. Okay. You must get a sponsor that meets our requirements. And just stay drug and alcohol free and really try to figure out what else you need. Now, let me tell you about the other needs. The other needs are, what do you need to do as it relates to the communication and the relationship with your family? How do you rebuild those relationships? Yes. So we get you in counseling. You immediately come back out and go to what's called IOP. IOP is intensive outpatient. Okay. So you have so many classes of that, and then you drop down to SOP, supportive outpatient. Then you have so many classes of that, and then you go to aftercare. So all those things work into play. So not only are you doing treatment from inpatient to IOP to SOP to aftercare, while you're doing all that, you're talking to a sponsor, you're making meetings, and we require you to do step work. Step work means what people have heard is called the 12 steps. And what I tell people is not just 2 or 3 steps, it's actually 12 of them, and you need to go through all 12. And then once you finish those 12 steps, next thing you do is you start over again. Because guess what? When you go back to step 1 this time, your perspective has changed. Things are different about you. And so what we do is we try to require you to focus on your recovery. Once you get that routine down of going to group, going to IOP, seeing your officer, coming to court, probably the first 30, 60 days, then you go to coming to court every 2 weeks. So you start out with more of us, less of you. And then as you go, we kind of take hands off and we try to see how you can manage these things on your own. Right. Right. Okay. So if you're just tuning in, we have Judge Lela Lawrence Mays, and we're talking about, the systemic problem of addiction that we're seeing in America, not just in Dallas County, and having this discussion about, what this means in the criminal justice system. And so I do have a question here from Ewan. Sure. Hi, Ewan. What has been the failure of these systems in the past? Has this not been tried before? Has it been tried before? I know in Dallas County, in that early 2000s, late 90s stage, there was a shift. Let me tell you the issue. You have to remember that when you talk about a system like we have, this is a big old giant system. It involves a whole lot of people, a whole lot of departments, and a whole lot of rules, regulations, and policies people have put together. Not
Yes.
everybody thinks that sending people to treatment is tough on crime. When people say,
Right.
hey, let me take my time, there's some judges that say, okay, go ahead, take your time. So it all depends. It depends on what court you end up in, because it's random draw. They assign us people. We don't know who we're getting.
Yes.
I think it has been tried. I mean, just go back to what I was talking about. I've been doing this since 2002, and you still see a lot of people taking their time.
Yes.
I don't allow people in the 283rd District Court. You can't take your time on a possession case. But let me tell you the other part of it too that I think has changed, Ian. We now have what's called an assessment center.
Okay.
There's an assessment center with Dallas County that's related to probation. It's a probation department that allows an assessment to be done on people. Because one of the other things that we have learned, and it is not just the people that are on drugs that have possession cases, they have burglary cases, theft cases, they have all kinds of cases. And over at the Judicial Treatment Center, we don't take anybody that has a violent case because we don't have the capacity for security.
For that. Okay.
For
Okay,
that
that's
part.
good to know.
But
Okay.
the whole issue of it is that there are options for everybody to I guess to decide what direction you want your people that come in your court to go through, and not everybody chooses treatment. And I think it's just the individual assessment when it comes to what it is you should do. But the assessment center, what they do is they determine if you need treatment.
Okay.
If you do need treatment, they determine, do you need inpatient treatment, or are you somebody that could start with outpatient treatment? But there are
Okay.
a whole lot of people that have been on the streets and been doing drugs for 10, 20, 30 years. Well, you probably can't try outpatient because it's time for you to
Right.
do inpatient so we can focus you and get you
Yes.
out of that same, lifestyle that you're so used to being in. So it's been tried before, but I think I think the system we have in Dallas County right now, from beginning to end, this is the best time I think we've ever had to be able to really be successful long-term with it. But I believe that there are about 8 prisons since we started specialty courts back in the early 2000s. It's a great, I'm sorry, it has been, we put ourselves in a position to shut down 8 jails, 8 prisons in Texas. And with that being the case, we believe it's due to the state of Texas doing specialty courts. Yeah.
Oh, you bring up such great points. And I'm one of those people that I would much rather my tax dollars go to things that work, that have positive outcomes, that do exactly what you said, decrease the number of prisons that we have. Because we all know in this state, it used to be a running joke about getting the electric chair, it was an electric couch because and so crime is not going to disappear.
Right.
That is just the reality of human nature.
I agree.
So there are root causes that you have to look at and say, oh my gosh, like what's going on here. And so I'm gonna go all the way back to President Clinton was in office and the 3 strikes rule. And grant you, I was fresh out of high school during that time, so I wasn't paying attention to politics. I wasn't paying attention to a lot of things, but I did know that quite a few of my homeboys that I grew up with got caught up in the game. They were selling, they had, the cars that boomed and all this kind of stuff. And, they were trying to eat and provide for a single parent that they saw struggling to make sure that they had basics. And so one of 3 things happened. They ended up dead as a result of territory, all that kind of stuff, to they were, incarcerated, and some still are, or they were eventually able to get out of the game. And those numbers are very minuscule. And so it seems like once 3 strikes came out, it just made the numbers, I'm gonna say it, slow progression, just skyrocket.
That's exactly right. That's one of the worst policies that ever came down, especially as it relates to drug and alcohol addiction. Because the issue that you run into is that when you really look at alcohol addiction, you all do some research on alcohol addiction. I'm sorry, alcohol and drug addiction, not just alcohol, but I mean all of it. It is a brain disease. It is a medical issue that I will actually relate it to diabetes, people having cancer, and any chronic disease that someone has. Why are we criminalizing this and not treating it like a medical disease? What do they do for people who their cancer comes back? You know, because, or their diabetes gets worse and they have to get limbs cut off. You know, we give them all the support, we give them all of the things that they need, but we don't do that with drug addiction because we say, I guess not.
Your choice to do this.
Your choice to do it. And that's not true. Your brain decides.
Oh, you know, now there's this push for mental health services. Now, you know, the push for our community to go and see a therapist to deal with your depression, to get medications, for bipolar, schizophrenic, you know, they'll have super high anxiety. Whereas a lot of people before they make that step, because their family didn't have that dynamic, I'll say. They're self-medicating.
Exactly. So not only the mental health part of it is it now people are addressing that, because we do also address that in the criminal justice system. That assessment I was telling you about, it also screens for mental health. So the people that are in stack with me, they have mental health issues. In addition to people that do not have mental health issues, we have the gamut from 18-year-olds to 70-year-olds. I graduated a 70-year-old a few years ago. So you got people that have come through the system many, many, many times. And guess what? It is never too late for recovery. But when you talk about the shift, that shift took place where people are now all of a sudden that you've got, you know, a lot of other cultures that are dealing with addiction issues that's out in the forefront. Now we want to treat it medically. And I think that's something else for us to talk about, because one of the issues I've had in STAC deals with overdoses. People are overdosing like crazy. And especially because COVID is here, depression, relapses, and everything has really increased. And with that being the case, people are going back out and using, and before you know it, just like this, they're dead.
That is so unfortunate. And, you know, this pandemic has really, I don't want to say it ripped the gauze bandage off of things, as we call it the Band-Aid. Because as we know, during that 3-strike era, that was peak crack time in our community.
That's right.
And we were not seen as having a mental health issue.
That's right.
And then when the opioid crisis came about, the shift seemed to go from, oh, no 3 strikes, no incarceration, we need to get them mental health. And I'm like, okay, but wasn't, you know, we saw New Jack City come out of it. We saw Boys in the Hood. We saw all of these movies that illustrated what was going on in our community. And we definitely need the mental health services outside of that, just from trauma being passed down.
Exactly. Well, let me tell you what has happened too. The other thing a specialty court does. And I also want to, you know, make this clear to everybody. I'm talking about people that are in the criminal justice system, but all of these things apply to people who are not in the criminal justice system. People who have not made it over to the Frank Crowley building, and I hope you never do, because I would like these issues and these concerns to be addressed before anybody makes it over there. And the treatment and the help is there. The help is there. The help is in Dallas County. And so, in every county, actually, you all, I am a part of a board. It's called the North Texas Behavioral Health Authority. We are the funding agency for 5 counties. It's a 5-county region. And we provide funding for mental health and substance use disorders. So now that's what, you know, that's what it's called now. It's called SUD, substance use disorders, really, as opposed to drug and alcohol addiction, but that's kind of what everybody knows it as.
Right.
People would just have to go to the NITBA website. That's what North Texas Behavioral Health Authority is. That's the name of it, but that's the acronym, NITBA. And once you go to that website, you can call, get an assessment. I think there, you know, of course, it's a waiting list now, but you can call, get leave a message. They'll get back with you on an assessment, and they will assess, just like we talked about Dallas County having the assessment center. The assessment is done in all these counties where they will determine your level of treatment, and they will fund it if you're indigent.
Okay.
So there are ways to get
that
there.
acronym again, because I want to make sure I post that into the thread.
North Texas Behavioral Health Authority, NTBHA.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing, y'all, where if you are struggling, you have got to get some help. If you have a family member struggling, give them the information they need. You may have to be the one sitting next to them calling to try to figure out, what do we do?
Right.
If you happen to end up in a court that may not be as pro-treatment as I am, right. You can reach out to your attorney. The treatment is there available. You just need to be sure that your defense attorney and the DAs know about it, or they know that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. You pick the phone up and call that lawyer. Okay. You pick the phone up, you go to court with them. If they need to be on Zoom, you get on Zoom with them too. And if they need to go to court, you go to court with them. Don't sit out in the hallway, go inside. If you can, go inside. And there's help for everybody out there. That 3 strikes was absolutely horrible for everybody. But now this is all the remnants of that, because now they've criminalized everything. And now we're kind of working our way out of everybody realizing this is a medical disease that needs to be treated.
Yes, because, you know, I was a former dietitian. That's what I got my master's degree in. And so, you know, I was on the front lines with trying to make sure that nutrition services were covered from a dietitian. So you had insurance, then you could actually go and see one. And unfortunately, still to this day, it is not a billable service unless it's through a physician, nurse, or a pharmacist.
Okay.
And so I knew the outcomes of lifestyle. And I know going to school, they treated it as, you know, hypertension, diabetes, you know, heart problems as being genetic, but it really isn't. You could have a predisposition with your heart, but the brain chemistry gets so changed with your environment and your food that you're consuming that it makes these even more challenges. And so I'll never forget knowing that Viagra was, you know, covered by insurance, and, you know, services that were really needed to, you know, decrease the cost of care of someone, getting them off of medications, making those lifestyle choices and having them stick was better than just writing a prescription for them. And that's what this system sounds like with your specialty program. And I hate that not all the courts in Dallas County are doing this, because it just seems to make financial and logical sense.
That's exactly right. And let me tell you the other categories that are currently being addressed in Dallas County. And I know I'm not going to name all of them, but let me just tell you the ones that I can remember.
Okay.
So what happens is when you talk about somebody having an alternative to incarceration, a couple of different things. There are individuals like me that have started Stat Court. We started back in 2007. We've been going strong ever since then. We've graduated over 2,000 graduates from that program. So we've got a lot of people around Dallas County. Those are the people that have been successful. Some of the ones that haven't been successful still are good when they come out of prison and come back out and say, hey, Judge, thanks for helping me. I've gotten back on track. The big umbrella is specialty courts. But under that umbrella, you deal with drug courts.
Okay.
There are mental health courts of different levels. Some are more severely mentally ill, some not so much. Right. You have a veterans court.
Yes.
You have domestic violence courts. Judge Tammy Kemp is over domestic violence court. Judge Rocky Jones does one of the mental health courts, one of the more severely ill mental health courts. There's a competency court.
Okay.
Judge Nancy Kennedy does. There is a gang court that Stephanie Huff does. There is.
So I know that.
There are people that are being addressed in the system in Dallas County that it exists. You have to be sure if you have somebody in the system, you better find out what kind of program they may qualify for. There's a DWI court. There's a misdemeanor and a felony DWI court. There's just many different ones that you just need to get the information and find out what your resources are. So when people come out of the treatment that I was talking about earlier from the Judicial Treatment Center, we try to find out what is the issue you're dealing with and how can we help you with that. So we try to help people to make sure, get over to SNAP, get a cell phone and get some services, get some food, get some money where you can qualify for services that will give you information on other services that you may need. Help on electricity bill. We have places that we have for Dallas County for housing. There are just a lot of different things that whatever this is, we find out that you have a need for, we will work on trying to help you get that need met while you're doing treatment, while you're working on recovery, while you're talking to your sponsor and making your meetings.
You bring up a great point with talking about the wraparound services, as we like to call it.
Yes.
And when I did the show on homelessness and talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
You can't get to self-actualization, that apex.
Yes.
When those basic things, food, clothing, and shelter are in jeopardy.
Yes.
That bottom portion of that pyramid must be met so you can climb up that pyramid. And, of course, I know people of all walks of life. I've had guests from all political affiliations on the show. And, for some of my folks that are, as I like to call them, devout Christians, that I am my brother's keeper. And I always get corrected that I'm, not using those gender terms, but seem to shy away from wanting to give support to these types of programs and stigmatizing someone or just saying that, this was your choice. And yes, we all make choices. I choose coffee so the world can have a more acceptable version of Sydney out there. Because without it, oh gosh, look out.
Well, let me tell you what, you talked about, hierarchy of care. One of the things, and that's why we really try to get people, there's a discharge placement meeting that takes place at the Judicial Treatment Center before they're released, so that we can have a warm transfer to try to figure out what the needs are of the people that are coming to us. And one of the things I suggest to people when they come out is go ahead and get your SNAP benefits. Because remember this, they're coming out of a 6-month inpatient, so they haven't hit the streets, but they were in jail before that. So some people were in jail a month or two, some people are in jail a year. So if you get those SNAP benefits, you can now move into the home with whoever you're moving into, your spouse or your parents, and you can help with them with the groceries, and maybe they can help use their money for something else to help you, because we don't want you to work right now, but we can figure out a way to try to see what do we do to try to help you keep your lights on. Let me tell you the other issue that has come up to kind of let you know one of the other resources that has been put in place. We have been doing a legal clinic within state court, probably last, 6-7 years. Well, one of the things I realized was a real struggle for people was not having a valid ID or not having a valid driver's license.
Yes.
So I began a clinic in partnership with my church at St. Luke Community United Methodist Church.
For those of y'all that do not know St. Luke is huge with the programs and the efforts that you guys put out into the community. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, well, we are a community court. We are a community program, a community church, and Pastor Richie Butler is our pastor. And we have partnered with Northwest Texas Legal Aid, the legal aid clinic for all of Dallas County. Okay. And what we do is we work with people, not just people in the criminal justice system that don't have a valid ID or driver's license. Well, let me tell you a story that happened to us 5-6 years ago. And I said, what? So we partnered with Diane, what's Diane's last name? Gibson, Diane over at Community Court.
Yes, Diane Gibson. Yes.
Miss Community.
Yes.
and Judge Cheryl Williams over at, and back when Phyllis Lister was alive, she's passed
Okay.
away since. But
Yes.
we were partnered with them because they're able to take care of traffic tickets for the city of Dallas.
Okay.
Excuse me. And what would happen is we would send them there. They would do community service in the area that they had their tickets,
Right.
and we would be able to clear up their license. Well, we needed to move that to a bigger scale, because what people don't understand is that when you get a traffic ticket, every city has their own jurisdiction. So you get a ticket in Dallas, Mesquite, Lancaster, DeSoto. I mean, you do the whole deal. And when you end up doing that, you end up putting yourself in a position where now you don't just have tickets in Dallas, you've got tickets in 10 other places, and none of the 10 places talk to each other.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, our second guest.
Hey,
Good
Justin.
morning, Justin.
Sydney, hold on, let me get this information. Let me get this information.
Yes,
So if
ma'am.
anybody needs services, it is an email for ID Impact Texas. And that is at gmail.com. That's an email where you can send your information so that you can get your ID and driver's license cleared up at no charge.
Okay.
That is for people that have money and people who don't have money. We don't restrict it to individuals that are indigent. If you need your tickets cleared up and we can try to help you with that, email us, ID Impact Texas at gmail.com.
Okay, very good. That's what I wanted to make sure that I had that correct, because I put that in the feed. So we have our second guest that was able to join us. So please introduce yourself, because we have been having a great time with this discussion this morning.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I got taken away by another issue, but I apologize to everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Ms. Walker. Thank you, Judge Mays and Judge Kemp, for having me and thinking of me. So I'm Dr. Justin Thompson. I'm located here in Dallas, Texas. I do opiate management, getting people off opiates, substance use disorder. I also do pain management, so kind of understand how people get there sometimes as well. So happy to talk to everybody about, kind of this opiate crisis we have affecting our nation right now.
Yes.
Unfortunately with the pandemic, we've seen those deaths continue to rise, and, our focus, really is educating people on the resources that exist out there. There's naltrexone out there. There's Vivitrol. There's Suboxone. There's different types of Suboxone or buprenorphine products that exist that can help. Obviously, there's counseling resources out there that help out. So I find a lot of people just are not aware of the resources that exist within the community.
Okay. Hold on, doctor. Because let me tell you how this ties in. Your timing is good. Your timing is
perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
so we have talked about people in special court. We've talked about people that have their addiction. We talked about it being a medical disease. Well, Dr. Thompson and I, we collaborated, I don't know, maybe back in 2017, 2018, when I put on a community meeting that dealt with drug and alcohol addiction and mental health. What do we do? Where are your resources? How do you obtain them? And how do we work within the community? Well, just last, Dr. Thompson, was it November, December? We had another community meeting. This community meeting was dealing with Narcan training. Remember, we talked about the people who are dying because of overdoses? Mm-hmm. Well, what happens is when people are off drugs for a period of time, and Dr. Thompson, when you get a chance, talk about this. When they go back, you can't use at the same level that you left using at before you went to treatment. Well, what's happening is when they go back out and use, their body can't take it and they die. They overdose.
Wow.
Well, we have something, and one of the things that Dr. Thompson was just talking about, I brought this with me. It's called Narcan. Okay, is that backwards?
No, it's not.
But this is what we trained on, and what we will be training on. We're going to have another community meeting in February, and that community meeting will be a training for people to use this product that we will give for free for people who are opiate addicts, that people can take home. You can put it in your purse. You can use it whenever you need to use it for anybody that you have in your home or that that may have an opiate issue. And Dr. Thompson, can you talk about what opiates are and how this kind of works, and about pain management? Because guess what, Ms. Sydney, a whole lot of people start their addiction through regular pain. they had a car accident, they hurt their back,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden
Yes.
their need for the opiate or the pain medication increases.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, Narcan is a great product. And I think, thank you, Judge, for mentioning that. And we did do a great talk about that back, I think it was just about a month or two ago, if I remember correctly. But, I think the big thing with opiates is there's this misconception that exists that, these people are just, seeking out opiates all the time. A lot of times it can happen from just normal pain management. After taking medication for a prolonged period of time, your body builds up a
Tolerance.
tolerance. That's the word. Yeah. And so, it's kind of the same as most of us, we drink coffee probably, and so, it starts with 1 cup and 2 cups and 3 cups. And then, before you know it, you're like me and you're thinking
Almost a whole container in that coffee pot.
if you stop drinking that coffee abruptly, you get this headache sometimes,
Yes.
So this headache, it can be really difficult to deal with. And you go find another cup of coffee or some other energy drink or, and it gets better. And that's mild compared to what these folks are experiencing with opiates, So if you ever had a caffeine headache, I mean, that's like nothing in comparison to what, our friends are dealing with opiates. And so
Yes.
it can be really hard to kind of come off, especially with nothing. Also, beyond that, there's a physical dependence. The body gets used to it. The body's wanting to kind of be there. It's like when you change your diet. So if you change your diet, you're used to eating, meat or cheese or whatever it might be, and you try to go gluten-free or paleo, your body doesn't feel quite right for the first couple of days. So similar concept, that we all can kind of relate to. So, a lot of times people go to treatment, whether it's inpatient or detox or whatever it may be, and they'll stop using for a prolonged period of time, like Judge Mays was saying, and then there'll be what we call a trigger. So a trigger can be anything that makes you kind of remember what caused you to use before. So, trigger might be a person you hung out with, it might be an area of the city, it might just be any event that happens in your life. And so triggers sometimes will lead to, emotions or thinking about wanting to use, and then that leads to behavior. And so,
Right.
sometimes people have these cravings that will come on for usually 3 to 7 minutes. They're very short lived. And then they'll
Yes.
want to use. And as Judge Mays was saying, they'll go back in their memory. They'll say, well, I used to use,
It was
10
my crutch. Go
my
back
crutch.
to their crutch.
What I
Yes.
used to use. So, with coffee, it's like, okay, because if I drank 3 cups a day and I go back to 3 cups a day after a week, it's going to be probably maybe a little shaky, but, it's not going to be life threatening. But
Right.
if I used opiates and I was using 10 or 15 hydrocodone a day, or, or I was using, heroin, a gram a day, I could potentially kill myself, unfortunately. So the thing that most people don't realize is people think about, where do these people get these drugs from? Well, the sad fact is most people get these drugs from their friends and relatives. Mom or grandma or dad has a prescription because they're a chronic pain patient.
Yep.
Right.
You're going to see their loved one struggling, and all of us who see our loved one not feeling good, we have a tendency to say, hey, what can I do to help you? Can I give you some Tylenol?
Right.
Can I,
Yes.
do something for you? And so if you've got, pills lying around and you see your child or someone, struggling with this, thing, it's, well, I'm going to give you some pills, and so a lot
Fortunately, enabling them in that
unfortunately,
process.
yeah, unfortunately enabling them. I think that people don't understand the risk, and or their friends even sometimes will give them to them. But the large majority of these people are not getting drugs from, drug dealers like we see on TV. That's just not happening.
Yes, it's not the Wesley Snipes character from Reject City.
It's
It's not Nino.
not.
Right.
Yeah,
Not that.
it's interesting too, because especially the pandemic with, contact being cut off from people actually struggled, to find this in some ways, but there still was a lot of people who continued to use, because over 70% were getting it from people that they already knew. So even with the pandemic, they were able to continue to use, even though they were cut off from like mainstream society, which kind of proved this fact, right? So,
Hey, Dr. Thompson, hold on just a minute. Everybody that's listening, stop giving people your drugs. Stop it. Don't do it anymore. Send them to a physician. Send them to Dr. Thompson. Send them somewhere where they can get some help. Because I think people don't understand the extent of the addiction that people have to these pills. Any pain pill, anything. Put your medicine up. Grandparents, parents, don't leave any of your medication lying around. You have to put it up where your kids, grandkids, nobody should know where your medicine is.
Yes.
You won't know that they're sneaking a pill here and a pill there. And you're wondering, hey, how did I run out already? Put your medicine up, please.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Thompson. Sorry.
Absolutely. Cannot agree more with what Judge Mays just said. I recommend having like a safe. Sometimes people have a safe for their weapons if they own a gun, or if you have a
They
weapon,
need it for their drugs as well.
same
Yes.
thing. So I think, I hold it in the same degree of safety as you would if you owned a firearm. I think it should be kept in a safe away from other people, and you should be the only one who has access to it, just to make sure it doesn't go missing. Also, if you are a pain patient on the pain side, if you do lose your medication, we treat it like stolen property. So I'm not able to even refill that for you. So a lot of times pain patients, they go hurting more because their prescriptions get taken or stolen from people that they know. And there's not a lot that myself or other physicians can do about that. So,
Right.
it's not good, on both ends of it. So,
Right.
so definitely keep an eye out for that.
Well, I will also like to add, for those of you who are getting prescriptions legally for these medications, don't sell them.
Yes, thank you.
Don't sell them.
Yes.
And I did want to take an opportunity to talk about how poverty plays into this, because some people who are selling their legally obtained prescriptions, there is a huge black market for these medications. And some are doing this as a means of making their ends meet.
Mm.
And so, that becomes a whole vicious cycle in itself with, getting into the criminal justice system as well.
Right.
And just poverty in itself is a driver with crime, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, the other part of it too that is really sad about it, I don't think people understand the devastation that this causes when you talk about providing pills to people. I don't think drugs, pills, anything. And I don't think that people say, oh no, my little Johnny wouldn't take my pill. Yes, he would.
Yes.
They're even having to hide medication when they're showing houses for sale. People are going in and getting folks medication. Grandma, grandpa, somebody who's on hospice, all that medication they have sitting out, people have got to secure those meds, because people are losing their life behind all of that. They're losing their life.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is very important that people understand this, because this is not just limited to people who live in the hood.
Oh no, not at all.
Not limited to, someone who is maybe close to making a minimum living wage or minimum wage. This is touching everyone in every walk of life. And, one great thing about my neighborhood, I see all kinds of people walking through, and I see their stories. I know what they're doing because I grew up in South Dallas. I saw the crack epidemic.
Sure.
And so just like when you were saying, Judge Mays, about stealing their pills, and my baby wouldn't do that. Well, a lot of us lost TVs, air conditioner, compressor units, all kinds of things, so somebody could go smoke crack.
Right.
And here we're talking about, opiates, fentanyl, and other medications now that have been produced legally.
Yes.
That are part of the pharmaceutical industry, that people are going to their physicians and receiving for whatever ailments that they have. And so now we're seeing another epidemic happening with a different type of drug.
Dr. Thompson, will you name what some of the opiates are, the more common ones? Because I think people need to really understand, as simple as we can make it, that this is what we're talking about when you talk about opiates.
Yeah, so some of the more common ones that you'll hear about are fentanyl. Fentanyl is actually one of the leading causes of death in people between 18 and 45. So, fentanyl is a common opiate that can be prescribed by a pain management physician. It was originally indicated for cancer patients only, and has kind of migrated out to chronic pain patients. Other medications that you may hear about are hydrocodone, or people call them hydros. Hydrocodone is a very common pain pill. It was less restricted until recently. Now it's more restricted, thankfully.
Thankfully.
Another one is, thankfully, yeah. and then oxycodone. I think those are the big three, that would kind of stop with. There's a few others, but those are kind of the big three that I think you would see that most people get prescribed by their pain physicians, when they kind of come into the office.
So what
it's
we have done, Sydney, we've been able to, there's a STAC alumni organization for the people who have graduated from STAC Court, and they were able to get a grant. Well, they work with somebody that had gotten a grant that give us these Narcan kits. These Narcan kits, and y'all, I don't want to open this one, but it's a nose spray that you can give to someone that is going through an overdose. So they overdose, they fall out, you position them, and there'll be a training for that we're going to have coming up. They do the nose spray, and what's happening is people are dying because the ambulance isn't getting there in time to save them. So Narcan is put in place for people to use it, for people to put it in your purse and leave it at home, or put it in your car, or just whatever, so that you can try to save that person long enough for the ambulance to get there. There's a second dose in case they still don't come to, that they can administer in the other nostril. It's a nose spray that will at least allow them to live until the first responder can get there. So other thing I would say about that, Dr. Thompson and we didn't realize that the outpouring of need that people had. We thought maybe 30, 40 people. I want you to know, we had that last, and it was me, Dr. Thompson, and Judge Tammy Kemp. We ended up having 91 people show up for the Narcan kits. We had 100 kits to give away. We gave away all 100 of them. And we're going to do this again. We're going to take it across the county. So we're going to next go to West Dallas, then probably North Dallas. So if you want to get a kit, if you want to get the training, if you want to get the information that we have, we also work with Miss Veronica Moore with Health and Human Services. And we had those folks from the United States Health and Human Services from Joe Biden's administration. They actually came too and were able to give a talk and talk about the issues that we're having in the state of Texas. So only thing I can think of, y'all will just have to come to my Facebook page and get the information. I'll also give it to Sydney for Coffee and Politics to let you know the next time we have it. But my Facebook page is Lela Lawrence Mays.
Yes, I mean, this is, unfortunately, the pandemic just exposed a lot of things that a lot of us already knew were happening. And it is great that we have these opportunities to talk about this, to get this information out, so someone can be saved and hopefully not have to go through the criminal justice system and be incarcerated.
That's right.
While they have this problem going on. And I can hear some people saying, well, sometimes that's what folks need. But that doesn't help them retrain their mind. So when they do come out, they're not walking down this path again.
Yeah, people don't have to wait to come into the system. You do not have to wait. These same services we're talking about, you can get. Even if you don't have insurance, you can get it. Let me give one other suggestion. There is a meeting that family members can make. If you have people in their addiction, whether they admit their addiction or not, called Al-Anon, ALANON. It is for family members, spouses, friends. It gives you a feeling of not being by yourself, that you have a family member, friend, spouse in their addiction. And it is a support meeting. It's like a 12-step meeting, but it's for the family member. So that's something they can also look up online and see if that may be some help to them, so people can get some support, because I think that's what we need right now, is support for families.
Yes, and I cannot stress that enough, that, if I'm the person that's dealing with the addiction, it is not just impacting me. It is impacting everyone who knows me.
That's right.
Who lives with me, who works with me.
Yes.
And we have to give grace and favor to people, because we don't know what people are struggling with. And Dr. Thompson, please, I do want you in our final minutes here, talk about, because this changes one's brain, the chemicals in our brains and how we respond to them. And you talked about cravings. And when I was a dietitian, I worked with people used to have donuts every day for breakfast. And now I'm trying to get them to do something healthier. And that it's just calling me and trying to divert their mind during that time for that craving, but talk about, how this really impacts the brain.
Yeah, there's massive changes that exist in some of the neurotransmitters in the brain. There's pleasure neurotransmitters that we all get, like when you eat those donuts, for example, that make people want to kind of keep doing that. And then it gets reinforced with another neurotransmitter in the brain that kind of says this is what we want to keep doing. So it is tough to break it, just like the coffee example I gave earlier, and takes time, so, using treatment in terms of medication, using counseling, and understanding that even after sometimes going to the criminal justice system, that people come out and still relapse because that hasn't been dealt with, fully.
Yes.
So definitely issues that can be resolved, and some people require longer treatments than others. So I think it's having a lot of grace for these patients, understanding the factors. I think having family involved too is huge. Just
Yes.
to gain an understanding, of what's going on. It's not people do better who have support. So I think that's huge.
Yes, thank you. Well, it is 11 o'clock. I cannot believe that the time has just flown by. Dr. Thompson, thank you for coming and providing the information that you have. Judge, thank you for your work that you're doing. And
Sure.
I do want people to understand that if during the lottery process, if they happen to be in the criminal justice system in Dallas County, that these resources are still available, even
Yes.
if they are not coming before you.
Right.
Because
That's
I
right.
think that is very important. And if I was a judge and I didn't have this program, I would want to, have this relationship and join arms with you to continue this work and this effort, because there's a problem
Right.
that caused the crime. And we need to address the problem, the root cause
That's
with
it.
to get people in a better place, so our tax dollars are not being spent for just incarceration, and knowing that that's not doing anything for people, as both of you all have illustrated, that people are going to relapse. They're going to just go back into, unfortunately, the trappings that got them there in the first place. So thank you so much for your time and coming on the show. I am very happy that I'm able to do this work.
Yes. Thank
And
you for having both of us. We really appreciate it.
yes, and again, it's an open door. So anytime that you guys want to come back, please, you feel like there's information that the public needs to know about, just let me know. We will work the calendar to get you back on the show to discuss, information that the public needs. And that's why I continue to do this, even though I took a big break for the holidays.
Sure.
It's 2022. We're back at it. So again, thank you so much for your time. Next week, we're going to be talking about micro investing, talk about a shift here. So, what is a valuable part of your portfolio, because I definitely want to learn about it, because Berkshire A and B, I've known about those since the early 2000s, and oh my gosh, late 90s. And yes, if I can get $5 worth today and then buy another portion and another portion, because if you know anything about those stocks, they are into the thousands per share. Chipotle, last time I looked, was almost $400 a share. So you don't always have to be a baller, as we like to say, to play into the game. So again, thank you so much for giving your time and coming on the show. Everyone, spend time with your loved ones, be safe out there, as we are seeing that, life is, we take it for granted sometimes, and we need to appreciate the time that we have with our loved ones and let them know how much we love them and support them in their journeys, as well as supporting and loving ourselves. So until next Saturday at 10 o'clock, everyone be safe out there and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.